Hey there, this is Dan. You're watching The Salty Sea, and today I am here with a list review of everyone who has submitted so far for Adepticon in the competitive tournament. I have 3 buds here to talk it over, all from my Patreon. Avery, Cody, and Rob are all here. Boys, everybody say hello at once.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Hi.
All right, thank you. We're going to get into it pretty quickly. So there are 50 people signed up for the tournament. 26 so far have actually put their information into BCP. That's just how things go. I am currently recording on a Monday. The tournament isn't until Thursday. So these are people who have been willing to post their list early. Lists aren't actually due until, I think, like midnight on Wednesday night or something. So people still might be tweaking things in between now and then. People certainly can reserve the right to change. This will be coming out on Wednesdays. Some of these will be different by then. But let's get straight into it. Adam Montano is playing Royal Beast Flayers with a lot of Gore Squires and 2 Flesh Eater Courts allies, the Cardinal and the Gore Warden. Pretty interesting one. The Cardinal is sort of an interesting piece for controlling big boys from other lists. It has a really nice ability where, unlike Nets, where they only lock something down for the end of the battle round, if you slide in to a giant Gutlord's DMs late in a battle round, you will actually still reduce its actions by 1 in the next battle round if you use the Cardinal ability, which is kind of interesting. And then the Gore Squires, I assume, are there because with 12 wounds, they can be teleported by the Gore Warden. So pretty interesting. Anybody got any thoughts on this list in particular?
Yeah, I like the Gore Warden having access to the Death's version of Log is pretty cheeky.
Mm-hmm.
So they can get some surprising ground covered. Also being on top of being transported by the Gore Warden himself. So I'd like to see how that plays into boosting an Awful Hound around, or each other like double Squire or Cardinal to Squire to get an extra big reach to probably try and get that off at a further range, the Cardinal's ability. I think that's pretty cool.
This one's interesting. You could never convince me to, put so many Gore Squires into a list, but at least here they make sense, right? Like at least here it's clearly done on purpose, which I like. So should be interesting. And this is a sweet faction in general.
Yeah, I think this is maybe where we might see some real play for those new FEC heroes. The abilities are really cool. I'm not sold on the points cost of a lot of the FEC lists right now. So I think allying them in and into other cool factions is potentially where we're going to see what these can really do.
Yeah, and we can maybe pause on getting into that more because there's another list we'll talk about later that I think is leveraging that really hard as well. But yeah, cool to see. Let's get into Brett with Discards of Hyde. I wonder if this is a friend of Chris's. But yeah, Brett Markham with Calthea, a Vindictor, a Knight Arcanum, an Annihilator with Grand Hammer, Doraz, everybody's favorite, and then a Vindictor. This list is really interesting as far as being sort of emblematic of kind of what's going on where in the tournament, where there's every fighter in this list is really good. Even Doraz is probably the weakest fighter in the list, and he is good. But as a construction, I find when I play Thunderstrike, I really want to have 7 guys. But here, Brett's willing to make the sacrifices to just be like really punchy, which is interesting. I don't know. What do you guys think? Have any of you guys run Calthea Thunderstrike lists before?
No, I have just been beaten by you running them. It definitely feels like a pretty solid list. I don't know if it's ideal into like the mission pack that they're going to be running into.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like they're going to be really wishing they had that 7th body, but maybe they just roll all crits. Maybe they just
sure.
Nice.
And crits only take you so far when you've got 6 fighters on a mission with 6 objectives.
Well, one guy on each objective.
One for each, right? Exactly. They got a home. Everyone's got a 1v3. It's that easy.
Legitimately, I have found that these Annihilators with Grandhammer can, with just one of them, cover an objective pretty well. I found, because I think, Avery, you and I actually played when I had Thunderstrike on a 6 objective mission, but it was the other 6 objective mission that I think is a little friendlier to these elite lists, because that's the one where there's one primary. And so then...
That's right, yep.
And so then you can...
You got to pick the one that you...
Absolutely.
To be on.
And so then the elite warband can kind of focus on the most important objective and get extra points that way. And maybe, if the swarm warband wants to take the primary from them, they have to get into range and then get, taken off the field. So I think that's kind of interesting. Supremacy is going to be hard. It might be worth just going through them. So we go from Supremacy, which is probably one of the most swarm favoring missions in the entire game, to Bloodshed, which is one of the most elite, like just whoever has the stompiest monster wins missions in the entire game. And then Most Dangerous Game, which slightly favors having a lot of killing power, but a lot of the things with lots of killing power have give up extra points. And so sometimes you can actually kind of get got if you have tons of fancy people in your list and, you're actually kicking your opponent's ass, but your warband is worth more points to kill than theirs is. And so you top out at 5 points. You get all 5 of your points, but they get 5 out of the 8 points available to them, and they end up tying you, stuff like that. So, interesting there. And then last is ley lines, which I find you really want to have numbers for ley lines. Oh, hilarious. So the mouse, interesting. This is a screenshot when his mouse was on this one. But ley lines, I find you really want to have numbers for ley lines, but that's not enough on its own, because if you don't win, or if your opponent manages to force you to win initiative and keeps the game down to a maximum of 3 objectives, they can often just bully you off of 2 of them. So that's a really interesting one.
It's my big iffy one on this one is game 4. It's really the real hero of this are the initiative dice, because like you said, you could just sit there and be like, I'm not going to activate anything. I'm just going to sit here.
Yeah.
And also interesting to see if the TO rules, if you're allowed to take the dormant points before they're awakened as well.
Yeah, we should make sure to ask them about that, before, in between rounds 3 and 4.
Yeah, at least get a fair ruling for everybody, so you don't have some people playing it the way they're used to and other people playing it the wrong way.
Yeah.
I'm on it right now.
I like it when you can control dormant objectives. I think it adds an interesting layer, but it's obviously awful if one player knows you can do that and the other one doesn't. It completely ruins the mission if that happens. So, definitely interesting. Also, I find that ley lines is a really different mission if one person has a really fast hammer, because if they can actually put 2 deployment groups into the center round 1, then things are really different than if they can't. If one person can get both their deployment groups to the center and one person can't, then it's a completely different game. Okay, so with those missions kind of outlined, let's get back to the lists. So I think this is really interesting because I would absolutely hate to play against this list on this second one, on Bloodshed. It could just ruin your day, right? But I do think it can be tough, with only 6 fighters in Thunderstrike to kind of cover some of the ground in some of the other ones. I do like the Knight Arcanum, though, for if one of the kill missions is Most Dangerous Game. I like that Knight Arcanum for killing stuff from far away. I mean, she's such a good sniper. With her...
With the Mage Blast,
Yeah, and she's got +1 strength on her Mage Blast compared to most mages, which makes her a little bit more dangerous because those 4s deal 3 damage instead of 0. And then her ability just deals really solid damage. And so she can just blow a chaff model off the board from really far away. So even if you think you've been really clever about your ability to hide, she can kind of prove you wrong, which is interesting. All right. Chris Hyde, let's see if he submitted his list at this point. Yeah. Oh, I did not expect him to be running Untamed Beasts. Okay.
Yeah, this is kind of fun. I like this list.
This
I love this list.
Yeah, this is very similar to my philosophy with how I've been running Scions of the Flame, but just keeping it super simple. This is a warband with good chaff, so you just run 6 of your good chaff. This is a warband with a good leader, so you just run 2 of your good leader. And this is a warband with a good FOMO crusher, so you just run 1 of your good FOMO crusher. Just keeping it super simple, a little bit cynical, but that's okay. I mean, I think that, when you're running first edition bespokes, playing them a little bit cynically, I think is generally better. Anybody got, this is a pretty simple list presentation, but anybody got any thoughts on this one?
It's just so cool, dude. It's just it's so cool to see UB still there, man. That makes me so happy.
Yeah.
I think with it being so almost symmetrical, you're also a little immune to getting screwed over by deployment. You don't have any one deployment. The FOMO, obviously, you want as much as possible.
Yeah.
Everything's speed 5 across the board. Heart Eaters on the double or move 6 through 6 dice.
Yep.
It's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would be happy to play this warband on all of these missions, I think.
Yes, agreed.
I wouldn't be mad about it,
Yep.
Put some work in, I'm going to have fun.
Yeah, and the pounciness of the Heart Eater, especially on, the double Heart Eaters on Most Dangerous Game, is just so strong. Especially because your hammer can reach their dagger and vice versa. If they deploy aggressively, because, you go dagger, dagger, and then hammer, hammer. So if they deploy their dagger aggressively, your Heart Eater can just pounce on something turn 1, which alpha strikes are really rare in Warcry. I've been racked with indecision. This is, in terms of really all around general hammer, this is what I've come to this first list here as being the most balanced approach to Scions of the Flame. I've gotten about 10 games in with different approaches to Scions since I built them. So I've been playing them a lot ever since my YouTube comments section told me to play them. And I think that this is the most it can play in a lot of different types of missions list. But a really interesting alternative to it is in a lot of situations, it's kind of nice to have a shooter. And I tested the Inferno Priest a decent amount, and it's just sort of a worse shard speaker. It can shoot people who are in combat, which is really nice because it has no minimum range, but all your people are range 3 and your Blazing Lord is range 2, so you're actually not in combat all across the board, so you can almost always find a good juicy target for your shard speaker to be shooting at. And then of course she has an actual ability where the Inferno Priest does not. So I found that this is really nice in missions that do like you to have some shooting. And then this was just an attempt for me to find something that could count to 10 with models I own. Anybody got some thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, I've played against you testing this a couple of times. And earlier on, one of your early thoughts on this was, are Scions just bad slaves to darkness?
yeah, that was one of my early thoughts. Mm-hmm.
I think in some sense they are, but at the same time, then you've got the Immolator, who's kind of just a bad flame hurler.
Yeah, yep.
But having a slightly less good version of 2 pretty good things other warbands can do in a single warband, I think it's got a good amount of utility that I really wasn't expecting from this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, that they're bad Horns of Ashut and bad Slaves to Darkness, but yeah, with a little bit of the utility of both, which is kind of okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think having the share the pain reaction is actually pretty interesting for them, since your chaff have 10 wounds, correct?
They do. Mm-hmm.
Right, so being able to get good dish damage back is not the worst thing in the entire world, considering they have some range. I'm assuming I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with their stats. I know some of them have like the 2 or 3 inch flails or whatever it might be. The Immolator is super interesting, saying it's a bad flame hurler. Like, flame hurlers are fantastic. A bad flame hurler is still just something that's way better than what most factions have.
That's true.
Also,
that's true.
We discussed it before. Most Chad model ever. Dudes hitting 24/7. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
FOMO gives you speed and access to things. Blazing Lords, you can throw some 6s, get lucky, dude just cleans things.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty interesting, and I'm really excited to see you play this. I never thought of it from the standpoint of it could be a bad Slaves to Darkness list, but I think they have some interesting utility and some application, and I'm excited to see what you take here.
So the interesting thing with Slaves to Darkness is what they get to do is, because their reaction of heal 3, they get to just win the race of my big things kill your little things faster than your big things kill my little things. And I've been learning, like, Scions cannot play that game because, the Blazing Lord is actually a little bit better at fighting other elites than he is at clearing chaff. Just because that 2/6 profile, he kind of wants to be stuck in a long engagement where he might just spike eventually. He doesn't actually want to have a lot of pressure to one-shot chaff, because a lot of the time he only does 4 damage to a chaff model. And then it's like, oh, wow, even a second attack of this is not going to kill this chaff model, right? So you just can't play the game of my chaff like dances around your big guys while my big guys attack your chaff. You have to put your opponent's chaff into these sort of massive Venn diagrams that you get to build on the board with your initiates. And that's the one thing they do better than Marauders is Marauders have 3-3-1-3, initiates have 3-3-1-4. So it doesn't seem like that would make a big difference, but in terms of sort of rolling 6 dice with like setting up at the end of round 1 to have a bunch of attacks in round 2, they're really good at 2 of them kill 1 of an opponent's chaff, and then the other chaff walks toward, it's like you get to focus fire really, really nicely with reasonable output, which is kind of interesting. But you're not playing the conventional game that is very effective for the factions that play it well. And so you have to be a little bit creative there.
With the flails, I find a lot of the time in a fight, ideally, you've got one of your big guys engaged with something and the flails swinging over them. And in that case, you're potentially getting 6 dice per flail. So if it's 12 dice, then that +1 crit, like, you're going to roll some crits. It matters.
Right, absolutely. This is the most you have to roll crits warband. Even the Immolator is on 2/5, so, like, you really want to roll crits on the Immolator. The Blazing Lord's on 2/6, which I despise, but, like, here we are. We're in it to win it. And then, of course, the Initiate's on 1/4. So the FOMO Crusher is the only thing that can do damage if I'm not rolling 6s. But, I mean, that's just the life we lead. So that was the one reason why I've liked the Exalted Deathbringer with them. It only has strength 4, so that can be tough. But he does actually kill other people's chaff faster than their elites kill my chaff, in that even against T4 chaff, but especially against T3s, he's dealing 3 damage on hits. He has 28 wounds, so that's not bad. So that was the one reason why I kind of was interested in this 10 model list, because it does let you play a more conventional game and still, like, be somewhat good at that game, essentially. But the one issue with this list is no really big thing. And I find that the Blazing Lord is, like in this list, I often wish the Blazing Lord was either just a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, because he's not really big enough and scary enough to be, like, a convincing second threat, but he's a little too big to just be like an interesting utility threat like a Dark Oath War Queen. So
he's right between the War Queen and the Chaos Lord.
Yeah, exactly.
When you were allowed to bless this list, were you trying him with any blessings at all? Or
I think him with +4 wounds is really interesting because then he can actually be aggressive because he's more likely to survive. Because he's got toughness 5, that's pretty good, right? But at 20 wounds, there's just so many fighters in the game that count to 20 pretty effectively. And a lot of them don't count to 24 nearly as well. So, and then you could do +1 damage too, so that he's on 3/6 instead of 2/6. And I think that's really powerful, but it's like you have to protect him then. And I don't think initiates are very good at protecting because of what Cody said, where initiates actually want to hide behind a tough guy as opposed to like standing in front like a lot of other chaff is good at. Like, you know, I'm used to playing Plague Bearers where Plague Bearers love to stand in front of your threats and be like, you actually can't duel my threats because my Plague Bearers are going to be in the way, and then my threats can like walk around, run around you and deal with your chaff while you get stuck in a mud of Plague Bearers, things like that. So any closing thoughts if people want to give them? Otherwise, we spent way too long on my list.
I think I got nothing.
Cool. All right. Eric Pruneda. Pretty sweet little Demons of Khorne list. Demons of Khorne were my first love in Warcry, but I have sworn off of them ever since Adepticon last year in the narrative. 3 big rhinos. That's pretty cool. Skullmasters can do real damage. They can definitely hunt you down pretty well. I don't know. What do you guys think? Any thoughts on this one?
I think this list is pretty fun. It does only have 6 models, so it's going to probably struggle similarly with the mission pack, like the Stormcast one would, especially because it's got such easy targets on Dangerous Game.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm rooting for it, one of those lovely little underdog warbands.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is one where I don't know enough. I'm not familiar with any of these models to know how they perform. So I really want to see them do well and find out that this is something people could be playing.
I think this is a warband a little bit like that Stormcast list where you could find yourself losing round 1, but then winning both of the middle 2 and actually being in a place where you're playing to be 3-1 in game 4, which would be kind of an interesting situation if Eric could get to ley lines with a chance to be 3-1. That would be pretty cool.
I think the part that's really sick that you have to keep in consideration for how Supremacy lines up with the objectives is that these big rhinos, they're rhinos, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, the Blood Crushers are rhinos, yeah.
Running Rhino Mount Boys, if they have a good run or charge lane, he's got to worry about the first edition OG terrain, but that's besides the point. He can double cap. He can absolutely double cap
that's true.
on Supremacy. Yeah. So he can slam I'm looking at his dagger right now, right? He's got a Blood Crusher and a Skullmaster Herald of Khorne. So he could jam one into your deployment right away, just tank whatever, have one take up 2, and then have another take up a 3rd, and just jump ahead, and then just try to stay alive and continue jumping around the board, taking a lead. Am I sold on it? No. Is it sweet as heck? Yeah. And I'm rooting for him. And everything's got the word blood and skulls in it. So let's go.
Yep. Mm-hmm. That's pretty sweet. I like the double capping. I like only one model in the hammer. Just like we're committed, guys.
Not afraid.
Not afraid. We're not worried about hammers at all. The funny thing is, I think hammers are only on. They're only important once. They're only important once. That's actually fascinating.
Legal to have you have to split your fighters evenly?
That does need to get reorganized, yeah.
Oh, good catch. All right.
Yeah, 6 fighters, right? I'm not counting wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
I assume he'll toss the Bloodletter over to the Bloodmasters group so that he still has this wild dagger with 2 rhinos in it.
Yeah, I want to see this guy go 2-1, like you said, Dan. And if he plays the long game and he's got his dagger and hammer set up and he just gets 3 rhinos on the middle objective and ley lines, that's a 3-1.
What I want to see is we've seen a few really hyper elite lists and we'll see a couple more. I want to see at least one situation where they get paired against each other in supremacy so that an elite list comes in undefeated into the middle section of the tournament, where if you can be 1-0 with like a 6 model or a 7 model list going into round 2, like this tournament just opens up for you. You know, like the whole tournament is just yours for the taking at that point, which I think is really an interesting place to be if you can like cross your fingers in that way.
That would be cool.
This is pure Kharadron Overlords, just good, classic, the most wholesome type of Warcry, no allies. What do you guys think about this fun narrative list?
There's waking up and choosing violence, and there's waking up and choosing murder. And we're still on the murder end. The violence end of the spectrum. My bad. I think it's still good. Like 2 cannons, 3 FFP sources. Like we probably discussed this ad nauseum in a million different channels, different times. I think not having a Medusa is okay. I think the interesting part is 2 company captains is okay. The Sky Warden, questionable, but I see what he's doing here. Not having an Engine Master lets Cavalry just freely charge in and punish you. In my opinion, you have nothing really hard to protect it. Sure, you could throw some dice, but you're not moving, you're not advancing, and he's clogging up your shooting lanes and abilities to get maximized damage if you didn't FFP or didn't activate. Plus, there's 16 wounds T3; they can be picked up easy. It's KO. You have to respect it. And you have to be sure to know how have a game plan going into it. It's a excellent, it's KO. But thank God it's not the scary KO.
I mean, I think it's a lot going to go down to whether or not his Sky Warden gets picked up without getting to do much. Because Sky Wardens, pretty fragile, but like a nice bit of speed as long as they don't end up accidentally getting ganked by something, because at that point it can fall apart. But also sometimes he's just going to be in a place where like terrain is in the way of charging down the Thunderers, and he just gets to open up, and when especially something like Supremacy, where if you charge down the Thunderers, depending on your list, you aren't actually covering objectives. So then he can, like, you could charge down the Thunderer's very first activation, and then he just goes, hey, I'm going to scatter, and he just, like, buries you in points. And he's just like, okay, the plan to kill you didn't work, so I'm just going to score 1,000,000 points, something like that. Kind of gives you a lot of flexible, interesting options.
There's a lot of objectives across these 2 missions, 6 and 5, I think. So that's a lot of places to set up a really solid fight for profit, and I think it's potentially a lot of opportunities for that Sky Warden to just like run over everybody and grab something that's undefended in the back.
Yeah, and especially when you charge down those Thunderers, they can get the free disengage. I guess it does cost a lot of dice, but it actually can like propel them really far up the board to go catch objectives in this weird way, right? So they can actually like start racing across the board if they're willing to just like abandon plan A, which I think is a fun way to play KO. I don't think most people do it that way. I think most people, when they play KO, like really focus on just tabling their opponent. And, in a lot of situations, I think that Cisco will table someone at some point at Adepticon. I 100% think that will happen.
Like short Tau, it's going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. Like someone will get tabled by Cisco at this tournament. He's certainly like one of the people who has a real chance. Certainly the most violent list that we've seen so far, I would say. Let's take a look at some dinosaurs. We've got a bunch of dinosaurs. A lot of the sort of what's the triple they have? It's like bitey bite. A lot of
tearing jaws.
Tearing jaws. A lot of people. I think the Sunblood is really sweet, and obviously, especially with tearing jaws. Of course, they have the cool sort of synergy where their reaction, they don't care about losing an action because all their offense comes from just one attack. I don't know. I don't notice any like crazy tricks with this warband, but just like a solid bunch of dinosaurs. Anybody got some
It's
thoughts
just like
on
a
them?
really honest classic warband.
Yeah.
This is pretty cool. It's just I got some skinks and some saurus. Let's have some fun, and I love it.
Mm-hmm. Kind of a good balance of speed here. Like I would hate to play against Jeff in the first mission of the day, Supremacy, because like he can get to any objective with these skinks, which is really annoying. But yeah, pretty cool stuff. Let's go to Jesse, who's kind of taking a similar approach to Rotmire that me and Chris are taking to Untamed Beasts and Scions, where it's just like, we'll play a leader. The leader's pretty good. We'll play the one good specialist, and then a busted ally, a really big scary ally, and then just only the chaff. So again, just like getting cynical and cutting out everything that's bad and just playing it very straightforward and simple.
Yeah. Cool. I like seeing them have some play in there. The hook neck is sweet. And then keeping on theme.
Yes.
The Lord of Afflictions.
Very important. Staying on theme.
You could have chose FOMO.
Yeah.
You chose Lord of Afflictions with intent.
And in a lot of ways, FOMO would have been better for him too, because he would have been able to turn one of these into a 65 pointer and then gotten a whole nother fighter in there. But he stayed disciplined, stayed with the theme, and I respect that a lot. So well done, Jesse. And I think this is definitely like I think if you're going to stay on theme with Rotmire, I think this is absolutely the way to do it. I think this ally is great for them.
Heck yeah.
Joe Alexander is not a famous name, but he is one of the better players in North America for people who don't know. He's, absolutely one of the best. All the Madison people are scared of him. This is a list that he's essentially played for ages, ever since before Master Molders were nerfed. It is, I think, a bit of an indictment on Chaos that he's playing a FOMO Crusher here. Not because FOMO Crushers are bad for the game. I don't believe that at all. I'm playing one most likely in my list, but because Iron Golems have a FOMO Crusher. But he's not playing it because the regular FOMO Crusher is just so much better, right? They have an Ogre. I can't remember what. Oh, Ogre Breacher. Yeah, they have an Ogre Breacher, but he's not playing it because the allied one is just a better choice.
I've played this against Joe with this list. He knows what he's doing, to say the least about it. I don't know. I think he's got a good shot of it with this one.
That was with your Hell Pit Abomination before they were nerfed, right?
Yes. That was pre both nerfs, pre Hell Pit and pre Master Molder nerf, I think.
Yeah.
And I think maybe I won that game, but either way, he is.
He was your only loss. He was your only loss that tournament. I remember that because he ended up in the finals.
Wait, no, because Cody was my only loss.
Oh.
This was the January event.
This
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay.
No, I lost to Cody. Maybe I didn't play Joe at that event. Maybe Joe just ran a similar list.
Some other time, yeah. Either way.
Either way, Joe knows how to play Iron Golems. He plays them a lot.
Yep.
I would be scared to be matched into Joe playing this list, even if I was playing a list I thought was really, really good.
Yeah, and also Iron Legionaries, toughness 5, 12 wounds, but on move 4 instead of move 3, like most of the toughness 5, 12 wound fighters in the game, which gives them a lot of play that makes them worth their points. You can definitely get into a situation where you just fail the damage check on Iron Legionaries.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. Yeah, I played this. This is the list I played last year where he rolled 2 triples. That's great. It just tabled me.
Right, because that was before the Master Molder triple got nerfed a little bit, right?
Well, he turned them into 2 quads. He rolled a pair of natural triples.
Oh, wild. Okay.
Yeah, I remember this list fondly.
All right. Well, we'll move on from it then so that we can minimize your trauma. Let's get into John Brown. John's from Wausau. That's actually pretty close to the Twin. Well, not that close, but it's like a 2-hour drive. We could go to one of their tournaments sometime. There's a couple of them from Wausau here. But let's see.
I think the Madison group has gone to their events a couple of times.
Yeah, they did. Double Beast Knob. Oh no, this isn't Monster Killers. This is regular Cruelboys, but just with 2 Beast Knobs.
Cruelboys with 2 Beast Knobs.
So we're staying on theme. We have a lot of the hallmarks of Destruction Soup with Shank here, giving you a net. The Swamp Collar Shaman is cool. I don't know if he's good, but he is pretty sweet. And
that's what I was going to say too. It feels like the weakest guy in the warband.
I haven't added up the points, but I'm assuming it's probably the Swamp Collar because Bolt Boy Boss doesn't fit.
Oh, sure.
He just wants a little bit of plinking.
And he wants the numbers instead of dropping these 2 for another Gut Ripper and then go. Because I'm sure he's trying to get the. Do Beast Knobs have range 2?
They have range 1, but they're also 0 to 8 on the jab throw.
Oh yeah. So you can use the reaction in Cruelboys to get like a free javelin throw really easily for them, which is kind of nice because they have no minimum range on that, right?
Yeah. So how I see this is pretty awesome, Dan. This is just a big zone denial list. Like Swamp Collar Shaman is not great in most terms, right? It can trigger off the Cruelboys reaction if they don't enter the 3 inches. You can shoot some wizard bolts. Nothing here is really dice hungry. So using the triple to make a 6-inch bubble of denial, especially on those brawl points, to say you have 1 less attack against us in this bubble.
Yep.
And then you can use a Beast Knob double to Cruel Taunt it to further debuff something. And then you create zones of no entry of come in and take a fight. My Beast Knob's going to get a free shot or a free throw. Come and take a fight. I'm going to get a free shot with a Shaman. It's interesting. It's going to be hard to set up, but it's super cool in terms of if you're playing in that intense reaction control. I'd like to see how it works. It's probably not optimized, but I think it's a really unique idea with the Swamp Collar Shaman.
I think if John can keep his Grots alive into round 3, he's going to be doing great. And this is one of the few swarm lists that I think is legitimately excited to play Bloodshed.
Yeah.
Because for the most part, this is like a really punishing game on any swarm list. Even though you do technically score 1 point if you outnumber them, the fact that you have to walk towards the giant monsters, I think he is legitimately excited to push everybody forward and have the entire game be down to 1 team fight, which is kind of cool.
My 2 questions about this list are, why put the 2 Gut Rippers in the dagger instead of swapping 1 for a Stab Grot and a hammer? And is the 1 Pot Grot and 2 Stab Grots, is that do you choose that specifically for the extra toughness, or is that just what he had available?
Like he owns 2 Dominion boxes and not 3.
Yeah, or why is the 2-to-1 ratio an intentional choice? Is the Pot Grot specifically there for the ability, or is it the model he had on hand?
I don't know. The other thing, so at least with the dagger, what I'm thinking is he just really wants to win round 1. Because you put Gut Rippers, you put a Gut Ripper here and here, so on the center right and the lower right objective, and they have so much staying power for opponent dagger, and basically, if you have Gut Rippers in round 1, that actually puts you in an incredible spot for supremacy. So that's what I'm assuming the weighted dagger is he's just saying if I can just win round 1, then I'm good for the tournament, which I think is a really interesting way to play. I actually really like that. I think that's really smart.
Yeah, it's a super cool list.
All right. We are moving too slow, but this is mostly my fault. I gave you guys all this stuff about how you need to be fast, and you guys have been, and I have not been. Another swarm. There are a lot of swarms in this tournament, which is pretty wild. This is a Lumineth swarm. We have Enlightener, Company Captain, Wind Charger, Stone Guard. I think I've played against Jose on TTS, actually, with a pretty similar list. But at that time, he was running 2 Wind Chargers instead of 1. And I think we actually discussed how he wished he only had 1. And so now he's only bringing 1, which I think is great.
Wind Charger, the bow kangaroo guy?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Also, they're not mounts, which is wild.
Yeah.
It's kangaroo. It's jumping.
Heck yeah.
So we didn't get any treasure missions in this pack, but Wind Chargers are like incredible in treasure missions.
They're nuts.
And
Yeah.
So I think that's probably why he included one. And also what's really interesting to me is that he chose 2 different +1 attack buffs for the list. He's got the High Sentinel and the Company Captain, which I think is really interesting. I mean, that's clearly the plan, right? Is to light something up with, I guess, buffed Wind Charger. I mean, let's be honest. The plan is to hammer people with Stone Guards, really. But it's an interesting, like he's putting a lot into this plan B, which I think is really interesting.
No, I've played against him a lot on TTS, and he also comes to our dude's a champion. He comes like 2-3 hours from wherever he is in Pennsylvania out to New Jersey.
Nice.
And he shows up and he faithfully plays LRL. So I've gotten like a good look at it. The kangaroos are deceptively good, and oh boy, I'm going to tell you the Mallet boys are also awesome if he has them in there.
Stone Guards are sweet. I was really hoping that people would vote Lumineth because I wanted to do Stone Guards. I have a lot of Lumineth models, but I just haven't painted them. And I have been wanting to make a Stone Guard list for a while. I only have 4 Stone Guards though, so I don't have enough. Let's get into Vulcan Flame Seekers. This is the platonic ideal of Warcry, of course. 1 box Vulcan Flame Seekers, which are pretty sweet, is generally going to come down. Oh, he went all split axe, which is interesting. Or he just clicked on the same thing over and over in Warcrier. Who knows? I don't know what the ratio of split axe to bokehs will be. I really like having 50-50 and having your split axes up front and your bokehs right behind them. But I don't know what Josh will. If it is all split axe, that's an interesting choice. That means he's not really valuing the double all that much, and he's just mostly excited about the triples, which the triples are pretty sweet. So,
I think he's crazy because I love the double. I think it makes the warband feel really good to play to use that double.
Sure.
But I guess I don't know. I haven't tried it in just the 1 box format, so maybe he feels like he needs the bonus moves or whatever with the 1 attack more.
Yeah, I played them.
His team name is Roll Sixes, and when you're using that double, you don't want to roll 6s.
Yeah, you're right. Because if he only rolled 6s, that double does nothing. Also, if he only rolled 6s, that Drothblood Thane is incredible. So,
yes,
very fun. Ken Burke with the first Liberator list that I've seen in action. I think they've had lists like this a couple times in the UK, but I've never seen it in the States before, so that should be pretty cool. Castellans have a really cool defensive aura buff. I've never used them, but I do have a Castellan. Yeah, right here. I love my Castellan. This guy almost made me quit painting miniatures because painting him was so difficult. This was actually... I started painting this guy. It was one of the first miniatures I ever painted, and then I gave up, and then I finished him like 2 years later. But yeah, anybody got thoughts on Stormcast Warrior Chamber?
It's interesting that this is our 3rd 6th fighter warband.
Yes.
A very elite heavy roster so far.
Yeah, we have seen multiple 10 plus and multiple 6 and very little just like 7, 8, 9s, which is so interesting that everybody's kind of going really hard in one direction. I find that fascinating. For example, here is an 11 fighter, entirely unique warband. No, God. Kudos to Kyle. This is not a reflection on Kyle, but warbands like this are why some people think Underworlds should be banned. just like an incredible, like, what does that fighter do? What makes Ione different from Vlash? But this is pretty sweet. Rob, you've played against this list a whole bunch of times. What are your thoughts?
Rob is gone.
Oh, Rob is gone. That's okay.
I got a little bit of something. So I have used the I forget what the name of the Underworld zombies here are, whatever that team is, the Frankenstein zombies. I like them a lot because they're kind of just like a 60-point chaff guy like you would expect, but they have really good burn doubles when they piled up on somebody.
Yeah.
Which not everybody expects from just random chaff dudes. When you're just like, oh, I'm surrounded by chaff. Okay, whatever. I'll handle that next turn. Oh, I'm taking 10 damage off this double. Oh, shit.
Yeah.
That kind of matters. And then, the Fane Force and Last, the Skeleton Sons are all just Graveguard. Those guys are really good. I think this warband's cool.
Me too. I think
really well.
It has a really clear thesis of I'm going to, flood the board, obviously, but then because I can't win any one-on-one fights, I'm just going to have my allies just be there to stop you dealing with my flood. So the Merrill Scroll Herald says any sweet abilities you've got, cancel them. You don't get any abilities for the rest of the game. And then the Cardinal says, just takes a big FOMO crusher or something and just kind of takes it out of the game. And so I think that's a really interesting... I think that this is a really interesting package in Death that I don't like very much in more mid-range warbands because you need the output. But in a Swarm warband where the hope is that you casually outscore your opponent, just like crippling their ability to run down your monsters or run down your chaff, I think is really powerful.
Is this Kyle from our group?
No.
No, this is Kyle from 3 Heroes, 1 Chaff, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that if you're going to run the Feck control heroes, I think this is the place to do it. I'm skeptical of them in sort of more elite lists, and I think this is really scary. Just like, because how do you kill anything when they're there?
Yeah. I guess the last thing I could say about this list too is I like how many abilities it has access to. Like, I guess you could argue that makes it dice hungry, but also you just have like, oh, I have double. Like, cool, I have the Moss Scroll ability or the Cardinal ability, or I have the Lightning Bolt on the chaff, or maybe one of the Graveguard will do the sibling rivalry thing, or whatever. It's like many things to keep track of for your opponent, and they probably won't be able to.
Yeah, I really like usually focusing on really efficient profiles and not worrying about abilities and only having like 1 or 2 things in my warband that have an ability that they're excited to use. Except here you don't have to choose because these all have abilities and they're really points efficient, which is really silly. So that's kind of a nice way to have your cake and eat it too. Let's go into Mark. Mark is doing the exact same thing Kyle is doing, but with Gloomspite Gits. Just trolling us all with all unique fighters. I actually think that this is going to be pretty functional because, of course, Snurk and Brugit is pretty wild. Bounderboss and Brugit is pretty wild. Rocket Trogoth and Brugit is pretty wild. So that's kind of all taken care of. The Boggle-Eye is really good. Prague is really good, right? In terms of nets. So like, yeah, it's an all Underworlds troll list, just like Kyle, but with lots of. I mean, it is. It's just like Kyle's list. It's got lots of abilities. It's got lots of.
It's got a ton of variants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got something tough. You've got something fast. You've got 2 nets. A Brugit, like. Hard to predict. He's gonna have a lot of options at any point.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So
Snorbo has
very interesting.
Got the little speed boost, right?
Is that what Snorbo does? Interesting.
That's the guy with the little horn. I think he has. That's half the value of the triple to the move characteristics of fighters within 6 inches.
Oh wow. Okay.
So that could really come out of nowhere too if you're not planning for it.
Yeah. So a friend for every occasion.
cool list.
Also, a good reminder that we need to let the Warcrier folks know. Let the Warcrier folks know that Boggle Eyes and Brugits don't need to count. I don't think they count as allies when they're outside of, or when they're inside Gloomspite Gits.
That may be user error. You have to select what warband you're in. So if he didn't specify that he's playing
okay.
GSG, I'm not sure. I know with some fighters that's the issue. I don't know about this one specifically.
They definitely aren't allies though in GSG.
Sure. So I don't know Martin, never met Martin, but what I will say is, in my opinion, this is the best possible Ironjaws list. This is the best Ironjaws list you can make. It's Crusher, Brugit, Megaboss. The Auric Brute is there to throw Umessin at things. Now, unfortunately for Martin, this pack is not as friendly to that as most are, because Supremacy is actually just like really savage towards Umessin because there's too many objectives to cover them all. But on most objective missions have like 3 or 4 or 5. And so Umessin is like totally busted and is the one way that Ironjaws beats hordes. And he will be able to do it on ley lines, for example. That brute it's in the shield, so it won't be able to do that in ley lines. But he didn't know that ley lines, we only found out today what the pack will be, so he might actually change his deployment groups around now that he knows the pack and put that, because if that brute is in the dagger, he just walks up, auto wins the center objective, and now he's ahead and he has bigger, scarier things than you, which is like not where you want to be in ley lines. You want to be, they have bigger, scarier things, but you're up on points, and now they like have to activate more objectives to catch up to you, but the more objectives there are, the more you can spread out and be harder for their big guys to kill you. That's like the place you want to be in ley lines. But Martin can kind of put you in the opposite spot, which is really interesting. The Brugit obviously is absurd with both the Mega Boss and the Crusher. Obviously, you're buffing the Crusher first round, but then afterwards you can buff whatever you want. Ardboys are really good. And of course, he took the big Choppas just in case he needs to Brugit them, because with a Brugit, the big Choppas are on 6-4-2-4 for that first attack, so that's pretty solid. And then, of course, everyone has charge except for the Crusher, who has on the Maw Path, which is even better than charge. So really scary, but I don't know Martin. I don't know how much he's practiced with this list, or like what his thoughts are on, Brugit next to the Crusher versus Brugit next to the Mega Boss, things like that. So should be interesting, but I do not want to get paired against Martin early on. Have you guys played against anything similar to this?
I don't think I've ever played against Ardboys.
Oh, really? Actually. There's a couple people in our group that run them.
Yeah, I know.
I think typically they run some pretty hero-heavy, pure Ironjaws a lot of the time.
Yes.
So,
seems
like, I thought, like you said, the way to build Ironjaws. You take advantage of their utility. You add in the biggest hero and a Brugit. It seems super solid.
Yeah, because the Mega Boss is the perfect secondary threat, right? It just it's so terrifying. It deals so much damage, and when it's not even the scariest thing in your warband, that's just absurd. And that's just such a great place to be. So yeah, should be very interesting. I hope to avoid them. This is another example of people just wanting to have every ability they can possibly have, which is kind of cool. I think a lot of people who play a lot of Warcry start gravitating towards like, I just want to have a million abilities because that's what's most fun for me, I suppose. Because that's what Martin's got here. So there's the Tree Rev Scion, Carthane, multiple Revenants of different types, 2 of each type of Revenant, an Errant Quester with Grand Hammer, who I think is my favorite version of the Errant Questers. I like Grand Spear too, but I think Grand Hammer is the best one. And then the Kurnoth Hunter with the Scythe to be pushed up the board by the Errant Quester. So just like an incredible symphony of abilities here, that is on par with literally any of the other million ability warbands that we've got. I don't know. Anybody got thoughts on revenants and other abilities here?
I don't know what all the other spicy abilities they have besides the teleport is, but I also like the Errant Quester with the Grand Hammer. Being able to just walk up and whack somebody, and then on a double whack somebody else is cool. And I think if I was playing this warband, I would maybe be disappointed there isn't any treasure in this pack, right?
There is no treasure in the pack.
No treasure in this pack is a bummer to have this many tree revenants.
That's true. Because he's got 3 fighters, essentially.
Right. So I have 9 fighters. So that's cool. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I like having 9 fighters. And 2 Kurnoth and the Grand Hammer, you're still going to have a pretty decent ability to kill stuff.
Yeah. So I'm just going to check if Carthane... Yeah, Carthane is the one who has the +1 attack buff. So that's what he's got, is a triple where you can give +1 attack in an aura. And then Spite Revs have a net. So Spite Revs can net you. He can give +1 attack. 3 Tree Revs that can teleport. And then, of course, the Errant Quester that gives the +1, or the bonus move, and then also can give itself a bonus attack if it's within 1 inch of you. So really interesting. Or he has to finish a move action within 1 inch of you, I think, to get the bonus attack. But lots of cool things you can do with Sylvaneth. I think Sylvaneth are really sweet. I really enjoyed running them that one time in our local tournament. And interested to see what these end up doing. All right, Matt Froome and Mike have not... Ooh, Mike has sent me his list. It is a pretty wild, like, egg grot reaction control Monster Killers list. I don't have the list up, but he is running egg grot control, which is really sweet. So he's got lots of overlapping ability to react and stop you from moving around, which is pretty sweet. Let's get to Nick with ogres. And this is, again, we keep seeing people, like, there's just no 7 or 8 model lists, which is so fascinating. It's everyone is either hyper elite or hyper swarm, with just like a few balanced 9s. But yeah, no 8s, no 7s. And yeah, here we see Come Fight Me Bro, the warband. Locally, we do have someone, Matt plays somewhat similar lists, although Matt would never touch a lead belcher.
True.
And
But
here
otherwise,
you're
pretty similar
missing out
stuff.
on the Brugette.
Yeah, I think Matt's style would be more to replace the lead belcher with a dog, and then I think you can do some other massaging to then get a Brugette in the list if you do that.
Yeah.
But still pretty sweet. A list that you don't ever want to get in a fight with. I don't know. I find fighting ogres tends to be about whether you can dance around the tyrant. And if you succeed, you usually win. And if you don't succeed, you lose.
This is just, it's so different from what I'm used to seeing. Matt being the only ogres player I really know. And this just feels so all in with only the 2 Novelars and 4 actual ogres, including a tyrant. So, I mean, for that bloodshed mission, I think that's what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like, I could really see if 2 of these 6 model players get paired against each other, whoever wins, I could absolutely see them winning the tournament. Because, just like going up, being in the winner's bracket to start bloodshed and then Dangerous Game. Dangerous Game is really hard against ogres too because of the on the maw path, and his dagger is going to be on round 1. And so, like, his ability to just kind of 11-inch threat range too, because they've got 2-inch range on the tyrant. So then, is it 9-inch threat range? But 9 inches of threat range, I think if he positions right at the edge of his deployment, kind of around here on the board, he can pin your dagger in or your hammer in so that you can't position forwards because his tyrant will just kill you. So you have to position at the back of your deployment group. And then how do you get out of just being right there for the shield to deploy into combat with you? So then what's in his shield? So then he's got a glutton that he can just deploy into combat with you and just immediately kill you. So that's a really interesting place to be, right? So really cool.
Yeah, having had ogres deploy into combat with me before, that's not good.
No, it's not.
You want to avoid that, and being stuck between it is not great.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're already good at.
Yeah. All right. So Patrick Schmeling with Cities of Sigmar. Putting a gunnery sergeant. Oh, so this is gunline Cities of Sigmar. I think Patrick might be. Is this the first gunline that we've seen so far?
There was the all KO list.
Oh, there was. Yeah. So the second gunline that we've seen. Yeah. Really cool. I think cities are really solid because steel helms give you such a good backbone. I remember that the Great Herald has a really incredible ability, but I don't remember what the ability is. So
it's like a triple, and I think Cities of Sigmar guys get to make a bonus move towards the Herald.
Yeah.
Is it rousing speech? Okay, great. Yeah, that one is good. When I played against Mike, he used that ability to great effect, and kept the game close, even against S tier Nurgle, basically on the back of that ability alone. Yeah, really cool. 2 Fusiliers is really committing to because I'm assuming that the gunnery sergeant will be standing right next to at least one of them. And gunnery sergeants.
Just the hero version of the Fusilier?
It's the hero Thunderer. So it is the. Yeah,
okay.
it's
So he's
this guy.
Piper Prophet on the Fusiliers.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So he's got. And he's an interesting choice because he's got the same 15-inch range as the Fusiliers. So, because usually people put in, one of these two because they've got legitimate melee profiles in case you get charged. But with this guy, you don't care. You're like, I dare you. I don't think you can charge me. And I can hit basically the entire board. I can just fight for profit right away, be on 4-4-2-4. I might just clear a chaff model on the very first activation from across the board, and then I have a Fusilier backing up right after that, which I think is really interesting. I think if you play against Patrick with no terrain, you are going to be sad about it.
You don't think he's maybe pairing the Sergeant with the Warhulk?
Could do that too. I think that's a lot of eggs in one basket, but he might just be like, I'm not afraid. Maybe I lose a match where they are off until round 2, but who cares? I'll crush you every other time. So I don't know which one he'll choose. Yeah. All right. We're getting to the end, so let's talk about Peter Mercencavage. This is very similar to a few Gloomspite Gits lists he's played before. He is very well practiced with this. I love the Crusher and the Bounder Boss. It can be really tempting to bring a bigger hero sometimes because, Gut Lords are just so points efficient, but just doing the Crusher lets you put so many other things in your list. 2 different Brugits, 4 things that go crazy with a Brugit, 2 nets. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I actually wouldn't want to be playing this list into the last cities list if your Bounder Boss isn't on the field round 1. I think it's
definitely
a nightmare for you. But if your Bounder Boss is on the field round 1, then it's a nightmare for them, which I think is really interesting. Peter has certainly broken a lot of hearts with this list. He, I think I heard him say recently on his podcast that they do 3 Heroes 1 Chaff, that he's been mostly branching out of Gloomspite Gits, but he wants to finally win a big tournament because he keeps coming 2nd and 3rd in really big tournaments. He came in 2nd at Adepticon last year. If it wasn't this list, it was only 1 model different. And so it might have been a Boggle Eye instead of that Brugit, instead of the second Brugit. I'm not sure. But yeah, so I think he's definitely one of the people who showed up choosing violence, wanting to win the tournament, which is cool.
Yes, Pete's good old-fashioned list that's been tried, true, and tested. He's really well-versed, a lot of reps. And every game with him, he's one of the biggest gentlemen on the board if you get a chance to play him. He's a really great guy. You're in for a real treat sweat game, though.
Yeah. Really cool. I like, man, he probably wouldn't do that, but like the Bounder boss can do some interesting things if you're in Supremacy, right? Because you don't really want to be playing 8 fighters on Supremacy, but with the Bounder boss and the dagger, you can do some really interesting things. Like you can, get the boss drunk with the Brewgit, wait on the Brewgit, then move the Brewgit onto one of the 2 close objectives. Then you get to move Snurk, and then your opponent will have had to commit to one of these 2 center objectives, at which point the Bounder boss can go and probably delete the thing that they've committed, and now you've evened the numbers game, something like that. So you get a lot of options here, even though you don't have a lot of fighters, which I think is a good place to be.
Yeah, I think I like just how many choices he's got with the Brewgit, if nothing else, about this list.
Yeah.
Because
he's got 2 of them.
This list, yeah. Not only are there 2 Brewgits, there's 4 good things to hit with it. I'm gonna be in the tank for too long thinking about what I'm scared of next.
Yeah.
Where the Brewgit's gonna go. Yeah, it's a good list. It's cool.
Yeah. Rob, do you want to talk to us about Domatan? Eye of the Storm.
Are we on my list now?
We are now onto your list. I would love to hear about Domatan. I think that's the one piece, like I even was talking to you about how I think that the pony leader is better than the Warhulk. And we had just I don't know if you heard when we talked about the other COS list, we talked about how great the Great Herald is. I think the one piece I wouldn't, and of course the Vulcan Runefather is just like a really solid combat hero for those points. I assume, is there anything else special there, or is it just like
It gives the elite rune mark out, so my boys can take the reaction on it.
Oh, nice.
Reflect damage back. He also offers me what the rest of the list, like COS, lacks, like a pit fighter style champion.
Like he's doing the same thing. He's doing the same thing that Pete's Ardboy boss is doing, right?
Yeah, T5 on him, and I put the War Surgeon with him. So if you throw a move and then put a Crusher on him, swing, I could Runic Flare, turn crits into hits, and then I can heal him back up with D6 from the War Surgeon. And then I can have him swing and keep doing things at range. And his quad can also be an excellent burn spell for single target. So he's kind of like a scalpel piece that also can tank. And then provide the synergy I need for having the rune marks for War Surgeon and Steel Helm.
All right,
and for Domatan,
we want to hear about the People's Champion Domatan.
The People's Champion, one of the greatest sculpts ever. He's got some force lifting rocks. Let's discuss that real quick. It's excellent. End story. He has the Bulwark rune mark, right? So the thought was, do I go this or Annie Prime, because that's the most efficient thing for 200 points to have a leader.
Sure.
But I have nothing to give it bonus moves or bonus attacks, and I don't want to sit there running somebody in for a duration of like 2 rounds.
Yeah.
Domatan on a double can change his move characteristic to 6, so he can move 12, and then he sits there with 6 toughness off the double with 30 wounds. So not only can I have somebody speedy on a 40 millimeter, cap it out, he's got wizard bolts, hands out the Bulwark rune mark to my boys. And his quad is a Hail Mary quad against hordes, and also just can do absolute devastation if it's allowed, if it goes off.
So he is like a Knight Arcanum, but without the burn spell, but then with a quad instead, right?
Yeah, the quad's AoE. It's like within 12 of him, and then 3 of that point, you roll value of dice. And then you get, for every 4 up, you roll D3 damage for that. And I've hit like 10 and cleared off deployments.
And then
again, a ton of damage.
Yeah.
It's a
risk,
quad,
it's crazy when it works.
Right, it's a Hail Mary, pretty much, yeah.
And then kind of alpha blocking on the double is kind of interesting. I find Stormcast bases, depending on the table, sometimes you can like fully block off a lane for someone. So getting up 100%. To toughness 6 is a big deal there. And then, of course, the +2 moves, you can move 12 inches to do it. Does he fly? No, he doesn't fly.
No, he doesn't. That's the other one.
That's
but he still gets the access to, if we have 15 damage on us, get a free attack. If we have killed something, get a free attack. So there's still some efficiency in doubles because most of this list doesn't really need anything other than the Runefather and Domiton. And then the Marshal just kind of does things, and the Herald uses a triple to just kind of pull everybody around.
Sure, that's pretty sweet. Do these gargoyle? I guess we don't have any treasure in the pack, so there is no punishments for having a bunch of beasts.
He just fit in at 50 points, and there's no blessings, so he could still react. So that's cool.
Yeah, that is sweet. Now that I know that there are no treasures in the pack, I do wish I had a bunch of beasts in my warband, or at least a couple, because, man, a no treasure pack you can really exploit if you know it's coming. All right, so we are almost at the end. We only have one list left, and I do think we saved the best for last. Trevor, I love you forever for having 3 Blissbarb archers. I will have 2 Blissbarb archers in my list, but I cut off their arms and put Sisters of Slaughter whips on them. You were brave and kept their arms on and gave them bows, which I love. Also the Blissbrew Homunculus. So Trevor is trying to build your own Slaanesh Kharadron Overlords, which is kind of sweet, right? Now, Blissbarb archers, they are in a tough spot where the modal outcome when a Blissbarb archer attacks is 0 damage. I've found that certainly to my detriment. I think I've only played them once, actually, and then I resolved never to play them again because they made me so mad. Yeah, the 2-3-1-3 profile. But I have actually enjoyed playing with the, where is she? This gal, the High Tempter, because she's got the extra attack and the extra crit damage, which is, usually you only get 1 little bonus for getting your prime, and here you get 2. And I think that Trevor is running... Oh, no, because Trevor's running a Shard Speaker instead, which Shard Speakers are sweet. I'm running one of those potentially as well. So, yeah, anyone got thoughts on this list?
These are models I have never seen played. I know the Sphinx has some play. I've never played against it.
Sure.
I think I've maybe seen Mirmadesh against you a couple of times.
Yep.
But you play the Slakeborn, right?
I play the Slakeborn with 4 Painbringers. Is generally the core of my Slaanesh lists. Yeah.
So maybe the element of surprise is going to be on Trevor's side here.
I hope so. I just love that he's bringing Blissbarbs. I've never seen Blissbarbs in a tournament before. I just want him to beat everybody. I hope he rolls nothing but crits with the Blissbarbs.
This is the same thing with the demons, right? You're just kind of rooting for it because it's underplayed models. Blissbarb archers have painted awesome, look gorgeous. Mm-hmm. He's got a Fiend Blood in there. Everything here is lightning fast.
Right.
It's awesome. I'm rooting for it. I love it.
Yeah. One mission that a Sphinx, in my experience, a Sphinx can win single-handedly is Most Dangerous Game, because here it's in the hammer, so it starts a little bit further from everyone than the daggers do, but the ability to pick something, run up to it and kill it, and also net the thing that would beat the Sphinx in a fight is really powerful. If you can do them both at the same time. And you can single-handedly win this mission with a Sphinx because of that. So that's a good place to be.
Enough missions. I am playing checkers while you guys play chess.
For people who don't know, JJ is one who will complain that his opponent is using strategy and then pull out wild... literally,
luck. That is me just having a moment of sheer panic, and all of a sudden something just appearing on the board, and me going, "Oh shit, I could do that." And it only happens. It never happens at Adepticon, let me tell you.
So, JJ, you haven't submitted your list yet. Did you decide between OCARC and Horns of Hashut? Because I know
I'm gonna take OCARC. I gotta take OCARC. I think. I could take the Horns list, but I've played the Horns list. The OCARCs, if I go 1 and 3 with them, I'll be super happy.
Okay. Yeah, because I know we tested yesterday, and you felt like you'd finally found an OCR list that you didn't hate, but also you went through a lot of lists you hated, and so I wondered if you were just gonna, because I know that you really enjoy the Horns list.
I enjoy the Horns list. I played them at Nova. I played them at the last tournament, and one of the things that's fun for me is trying different things.
Sure.
So, and having the Dreadblade be able to teleport turned out to be really useful.
Yes.
10-inch range moving around.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe they're just going to be really awful depending on how they mention the missions. Maybe I should do my Horns list. I don't know.
Well, Horns are pretty good in Supremacy, but so are OCR, right?
Right.
Although I did measure the closest you can get. So it's 6.1. So from the center objectives to the closest you can be on them with the dagger. So move 3 fighters have to spend dice to get to the center objectives, but that's not too big a deal. It's just it's worth knowing.
Yeah.
But the teleport, I played Supremacy, or not Supremacy, but a very similar 6 objective mission with Sylvaneth, where I had fewer fighters than my opponent, but because of the teleports, I could be perfectly efficient on every objective. I could just be on the objectives I wanted to be on and none of the objectives I didn't want to be on. So if my opponent moved to outnumber me on an objective, I could blink off of it and be on a different objective, and now they were wasting 2 fighters on an objective that they could have won with 1, stuff like that. And so I actually got to kind of ruin my opponent's math using teleports. So that's kind of an interesting place to be on these massive 6 objective missions where you're under so much pressure to cover the whole board at once.
Yeah. I mean, I'll probably go with OCR is what I'm thinking, unless you just think they're unplayable, and I'll just be miserable.
Well, I'm not allowed to call things unplayable anymore. Did you hear?
No.
I think OCRs are very, very good. I'm actually surprised more people aren't. I'm always surprised that more people aren't running OCR Bone Reapers, to be honest. It seems like...
I think it's just not everybody likes the way they cook.
Sure.
We have 2 of them this league in TTS, and it's objective heavy. We're doing the White Dwarf League. One boy is just running 15 Bone Boys, and somebody else is running 13, but they have the Marrow Scroll Herald and the Wielder of the Blade. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what, man, 55 points, dropping 10 wounds, T5, and you have that activation. You have the ability to kind of sneakily get up there with the Hecatos. I think OBR is fantastic if you want to take them to build Brawl or you want to take them to build for Objective. I think they're great.
Mm-hmm. I generally think that the best factions, other than a couple destruction ones, I think the best chaff factions are also the best Brawl factions. You just run fewer chaff, but then you get the extra little activation because the allies travel. You bring in the brawlers you want, and so that's a good place.
My problem is I just don't have time to go get anything or test anything now because I had built my list originally with blessings in mind. So
yeah, that was wild. We wasted a good 4 or 5 games just testing +1 attack FOMO crushers and +4 wound blaze lords and +1 strength OCR stalkers before we figured out what we were actually allowed to run and not allowed to run. If anybody is watching this, if it's not too late for you, just note that monsters and blessings cannot be used for this tournament. So if you were thinking of having that, just don't, because you'll be sad.
Probably the other 20 lists haven't been submitted yet. Everyone was like, "Oh crap, no blessings."
Yeah.
Doing yet.
Yeah, I'm very interested.
It would have messed me up really bad if I was playing this event.
Oh yeah,
I would have absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because we have 26 players and about 20 lists out of the 50 who have signed up. We'll probably have 40, 45 actually playing. So a whole half of the field hasn't signed up yet. I know at least one person who hasn't signed up yet is playing just straight Nurgle Swarm just out of people's nightmares. So there are some violent people showing up that haven't put their lists in yet. I think in general, it's usually the more connected crowd that's signing up and putting their lists into BCP early. So I think we'll get more weird stuff coming in soon, I assume. But until we find out, I'm excited. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was gonna say Nurgle's list from people's nightmares, but I see that list every event we run, man.
Sure. Fair enough.
It's real.
Yeah. Well, it's not me running it this time. Fred Shred from the podcast Dayton Warcry Club is going to be bringing that. Sadly, Warren couldn't come. He was going to bring Horns of Hashut, but he couldn't make it until the narrative tournament. So he's actually bringing Horns of Hashut into the narrative tournament, which should be pretty funny.
Something I'm sure will upset absolutely nobody.
There to make friends.
Yeah. All right. Well, anybody got some closing thoughts on the spread of lists here? I found it was, at least personally, the thing I was struck by was how few people landed in the middle, as far as numbers and stuff. Like most people chose to skew. We didn't know the missions until this morning, and so I think maybe there was an element of I don't know what the pack is going to be, so I'm just going to go all in on one style and just hope that the matchups work my way.
I think that was it. A combination of not knowing the mission. It's either commit to a style or just play what you want. If you can't plan for the missions, just I've wanted to try this warband out, and I don't know it's a bad idea, so I'm going to run it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, pleasure having you guys come on to discuss all the lists. Very much looking forward to what the last little bit of signups give us. And until the tournament, may all your rolls be crits. Bit of a time jump here to get a last few lists in. Very excited. We see at this point there's 39 people signed up out of the 50 total. We've got a few pretty cool ones. The players who win all of the Utah events have all signed up and are all here, which is great. Playing things like a bajillion Soulblight Gravelords. We joked about how everyone was still going either all Swarm or very elite, and that trend still seems to be going. But we've seen a few more people who have just woken up and chosen violence. So, for example, we do have some Horns of Hashut. We have Fred Shred going just 2 really big, fast friends and a bunch of Plague Bearers. That's just a classic way to play Nurgle. Love to see that. Don't want to get paired against that. My prediction that generally the people who posted their lists early would be the more kind of switched on folks who are more willing to sweat a little bit harder. That turned out to be untrue. We've got a lot of pretty intense stuff showing up late, so that's pretty exciting, and can't wait to play. I think that this pack is going to be very interesting in terms of the first mission is just so skewed towards one type of list, and then the pack itself is fairly average. If it was random pairings, you might see something really different, but there's a really interesting dynamic where if you're on pure Swarm, it's going to be really hard to lose round 1, and then it's going to be really hard to emerge undefeated into round 4 when you've got to fight 2 kill missions in a row. So a very interesting little sort of dynamic there. So I can't wait to see how that plays out. Packs matter for playing. So we'll see what happens tomorrow, and I'll have more videos with all of the reveals, everything else from Adepticon. I'm very excited. So until then, may all your rolls be crits.